Hey everyone. So I wanted to come on here and talk about something a little intriguing. Um, as you know, one of the things I've been promoting at the end of my videos, and I'll tell you about it right now, is I have a Patreon, which is FBW Roses, and the link is in the description if you want to check that out, as well as the other links to where you can find me. And also like the video, ring the bell for notifications, and subscribe to the channel. Be greatly appreciative. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying. Um, I have a Patreon myself, but I also know people that I support on Patreon that kind of share the same interest that I do, that use Patreon to let you, the individual that might subscribe to them for a certain amount, a month, maybe yearly, at a certain tier, you know, those, they allow you, basically, what I'm trying to say, to essentially have access to content that you won't get until maybe a week later on YouTube, a week later on a podcast like Spotify or wherever, or even maybe a few months later on places like DeviantArt or For Infinient or wherever. Mainly because they want to keep that to them. They want to keep that exclusive to the people that pay them, so that when word gets around of, hey, we just saw this on Patreon, you're going to love it once it comes out to YouTube or wherever it's going to go publicly in the future. But one thing that's notable about Patreon, and I've talked about this before, is the fact that just like Gumroad as well, it's kind of going through some changes. And a lot of the people I follow, like Trouble TRO, who goes by TTRO here on YouTube, I'll put a link to their channel in the description. But people like TTRO, and then another person that's here on YouTube called Labyssitory, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Um, what they've been doing lately is, they, along with others I'm sure of, have been basically letting people know that they still can access the content they want, but it's going to be a little bit more different. You see, with Labyssitory, when he went from Gumroad to Patreon exclusively because of Gumroad's policy changes, basically, at first he was trying to follow, I'm assuming to follow in the footsteps of those that were on Patreon before him. Basically, let people see there on his, that supported him, let them see the content first right there on his Patreon page. But not even soon after he joined Patreon and seeing other people he's worked with kind of have to take a leave, if you will, elsewhere, like Subscribestar and all that, he decided that, well, Patreon is still probably the best solution. He was going to take a different directive. And that directive was to create an archive on Google Drive. And what he does is he allows people that have access to that drive via Patreon to look at what he's working on, like what stories he's already done, what stories are in the works, what main projects and everything, and so on, and even a description of which character has certain abilities and is known to do certain things and all that. And Labyssitory, like I said, has set that up because, with Patreon, you don't know exactly what the future is going to hold. Now, Triple TRO, TTRO here on YouTube, um, for a while, and they still kind of do, but for a while, for most of the duration on YouTube, I believe, not YouTube, but Patreon, most of the duration on Patreon, I should say, um, they've always let people see visually what the next part in one of the story series that they're working on, or little side projects they're doing here and there. But when it comes to things lately, it's been kind of weird. You see, if you can't pay your account or anything like that, Patreon will hold off on it for a bit. They'll hold off on it. They'll basically not let you view anything until you get up to date, and that's fine. That's fine. But what's interesting is TTRO has been going in a different direction. Now, I'm not sure if it does tie into what's the changes that Patreon's been doing, but lately they've been doing something similar to what Labyssitory has been doing. And what they've been doing is messaging the supporters with links to the Google Drive that hold the next chapter. It holds the next part in whatever series or project they're working on. And this kind of It's surprising to me because I'm thinking, well, what is this? And my only thought process, my only theory, is it's due to the fact that Patreon is going through some changes, and maybe just me, just my speculation here, I could be wrong. Maybe TTRO, Trouble TRO, has gotten a message from them. Maybe they got PM'd by them that they got PM'd them trying to say private message, if you will. And this is just my assumption. They probably got private messaged by them to stop uploading, the content of the series because some of the series involves certain activities, if you know what I mean, certain very intimate NFSW activities and moments. And if that's the case, then okay, that's fine. It's understandable as to why they would do it this way. But why go in the direction of using Google Drive? Well, Google Drive for anybody allows you to share your content and your folders with anybody you choose. In this case, if you're subscribed to someone like Trouble TRO or Labyssitory, it allows you to have access via their courtesy, by their permission, if you will. It allows you to have access to their content. Now, what's interesting though is even if you don't have a subscription with them, you still have access, which is kind of weird. You still have access to it. So even if you can't pay monthly, on Patreon for them, you could still view. You could still view what they're putting together, and everything down the line. And what's interesting is Trouble TRO would come out and say that, you know, if you don't got a message from him, indicating, hey, this is where you can find the next part of the story and everything. And hold on for a second while I do something. I had to check something, guys. I'm sorry about that. I had to check something real quickly. But anyway, what I'm saying is that, he'll send you a message, indicating that, hey, if you didn't get anything from me, let me know. I'll send you the link. Because he's been constantly good about doing this lately. But the difference between him and Labyssitory is he's only giving you access to, the current chapters and everything of the project of the stories he's working on, the webcomics he's working on. Labyssitory still in my opinion, from what I've seen, you're still able to access it even if you don't have, your subscription updated, which is kind of weird, but what are you going to do? Now, I'm sure that does change over time, and whatever, whatever links, Labyssitory or Trouble TRO will give you will expire or it will change, so that way you'll have to make sure you're updated to keep, current with them, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing. But, it is kind of surprising that they're going in this direction and everything, and I'm sure others that I follow, like Joven16 and and several others that follow suit that kind of work in the same genre, as these three do. I'm sure Jovan16 is going to go in that same direction. They're going to basically, have to go to Google Drive or wherever to allow people access to the next part of those stories, because they've recently put up newer chapters for Nano Shift and Brianna's Secret Life, which are two of the primary stories they're working on right now. So so you look at what they're doing in those parts. You look at what is shown in those two recent parts, and it kind of gives you an idea that maybe Jovan16 might be going down that same route down the line. Because again, my belief is that the reason this is happening is mainly because of the fact that, well, let's be honest, Patreon is changing. They're changing. Some people would think, would believe not for the better, but for the worse. And this is why we see somebody like Nexy Comics, Nexy Comics, or Nexstat, if you will, doing what they did, going and making their own website and everything, so that you would have to use your Patreon to log into said website, if you're a member, so you can get access to what, is there and all that. But yeah, it's kind of a surprise, honestly. And, I haven't yet seen if there's any explanation as to why this changes. Well, I have seen an explanation from Trouble TRO as to why they're doing this, and I've seen an explanation from Labyssitory or anything, but neither of them have come out directly and explained the real reason, in person or whatever. to kind of let you know this is why, or they've given a detailed explanation, on the post or anything to explain why they went in this direction. But one of the reasons, according to Trouble TRO, is because of the changes of you go into free tier or cancel tier or whatever, something of that effect. So to me, I just chalk it up in my speculation, for my theological brain, if you will. I kind of chalk it up to you. Patreon is getting more, stricter on what you can use Patreon for. Um, outside of, like, let's say what Linkara does for the Top the Fourth Wall and such, or Animat does and everything, with his stuff. So that's the feeling I'm getting, that this is basically all about Patreon becoming a little bit more stricter, and I could see why Trouble TRO and Labyssitory would want to keep their Patreon, but use it to kind of link people to other outlets to look at what they can bring to the table. It's the same thing with Rowdy C with TV Trash, Chris Moore. He will link you basically to his OneDrive to watch the unedited versions of his TV Trash episodes, if you will, so that way you don't see like his logo on the screen blocking everything and so on. But yeah, that's the only thing I can come up with. It's the only theory I can think of, as to why, I'm suddenly seeing this change and all that. And I'm sure they're not the only ones that are doing it. Again, I believe Jovan 16 is going to go down this route soon. And I'm sure others, that work in the same genre, NFSW, risque kind of stuff, are going to probably head in this direction as well. Either that or they're going to move to Subscribe Star, because it's a lot more freelance, for this kind of stuff to be showcased in. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Let me know what your thoughts are on, these kind of changes. And if any of you support these people, let me know what your first thoughts were when you got the message from Trouble TRO about, this and everything, and, the link to, the recent chapters to some of his projects. Let me know down below in the comments, as well as on live chat during the premiere. Like the video, guys. Again, as I said at the beginning, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Also, check out the Teespring store. The link will be in the description at the bottom. Also, guys, check out my content elsewhere, like I said, at Patreon, because I do have a Patreon. Also, check me out at all your favorite audio and video podcast affiliates, like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Spotify, Pandora, Audible from Amazon, Overcast. You name it, if it's got a podcast, you'll probably find mine there as well. Also, check me out at VENMO.com at BWRoses, Odyssey.com at BWRoses.5. Also, check me out at Rumble.com at BWRoses, StephenArt.com at BVW1979, InkBunny.net at BWRoses. Also, check me out at Venmo and Cash App as well to help support there. And, guys, follow me on Twitter, aka X at BWRoses, and at Blue Sky at BWRoses, and on TikTok at BWRoses. But, guys, give me your thoughts on what I had to say here. Let me know if you've experienced something like this as well, in support of what you